Shalom Aleichem, Na'aleh viewers. Welcome to another shiur in Masechet Brachot. This shiur is dedicated Lili Nishmas Rachalea Bas Reb Chaim Tzvi. We're continuing in Masechet Brachot on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. There's a big sugya, a famous sugya in the middle of the Amud, the two dots. This is the sugya of Pasach b'deshichra v'siyim b'dechamra. Says the Gemara, the two dots. Makom she'amru laharich einer rishoy lekatzer, lekatzer einer rishoy laharich. We learned in the previous Mishnah on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph that there are two brachas in Brachas Kriya Shema. There's a long bracha and there's a short bracha. The long bracha should not be shortened. The short bracha should not be lengthened. When you are supposed to conclude, you should not omit a conclusion of Baruch Atah Hashem. When you don't have to conclude, you shouldn't insert the bracha of Baruch Atah Hashem. Says the Gemara, Pshita, it's obvious, says the Gemara, Heicha dekanokit kasa dechamra biyodei v'kesavar deshichruhu, says the Gemara. It's obvious. This din is clear that in a situation where a person is holding in his hand a cup of wine and he thought mistakenly that it was a cup of beer, he's actually holding a cup of wine. The correct bracha to recite is Boirei Pri Agofen, but he made a mistake and he thought that he was holding a cup of beer, upon which the bracha of Shahako El Nia B'Dvaroi is the appropriate bracha. Says the Gemara, Upasach umevarech adaita deshichra. A person, he was holding in his hand a cup of wine, but he mistakenly thought that it was beer, and he begins to recite a bracha having in mind that he's holding beer. That's what he thinks he's holding. So he plans to say Shahako El Nia B'Dvaroi V'siyim b'dechamra, and then he caught himself and realized his mistake and concluded with the correct bracha for what he's holding in his hand for wine. He said Boirei Pri Agofen. Says the Gemara, it's pashut that in that case yotza. It's pashut that in that case where he's holding wine and he thought that it was beer, and he began to say a bracha with the mindset of making a shahako, and then he realized his mistake and he said Boirei Pri Agofen. It's clear to us, says the Gemara, in that case yotza. He fulfilled his bracha properly. He doesn't have to repeat and say another bracha. Why? For even if he would have continued with his mistake and concluded the bracha Shahakol Nia B'Dvaroi, he would also fulfill his obligation. He would also be Yotzei. Dehotnan al Kulam Imama Shahakol Nia B'Dvaroi Yotza. We learned in the Mishnah later in the 6th parak of Brachis that if you make a Shahakol on anything, B'diavad you're Yotzei. So if you say Shahakol on wine, B'diavad counts as a bracha. It's a valid bracha. So had he continued and said Shahakol, he would have been Yotzei. So if he caught himself and he realized and corrected himself and said Hagofen, he's definitely Yotzei. He definitely fulfilled his obligation. Says the Gemara, so that halacha is clear. But in a case where an individual is holding in his hand a cup of beer, which the correct bracha is shahako, and he made a mistake, he was confused, he thought that really it was a cup of wine in his hand, and he begins to say the bracha with the mindset that he's making a bracha on wine. He's planning to say Boirei Pri Agofen, and then he caught himself And he remembered and he said, Shahakal near b'dvaroi, because actually it's beer. My. What's the halacha in such a situation? What's the question, says the Gemara? Basar ikar bracha azlinon, oy basar chasima azlinon. Do we look at the ikar bracha? Do we look at the main part of the bracha? Or do we look at the conclusion of the bracha? Says the Gemara further, Toshima will bring you a proof from a Braisa. We learned in the Braisa, Shachris Posach b'yoytzer oir v'siyein b'mariv harovim lo yotza. If in the morning a person begins Birchas Kriyishma and he says the bracha of yoytzer oir, and then he concludes with Mariv Harovim, he's planning to say the bracha of Yotzei Or, and he got